It was late. Past midnight on March 18th, 1990. St. Patrick's Day weekend was winding down in Boston. The city was full of green beer and tired revelers, but inside the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, it was quiet. The museum was a strange and beautiful place. It wasn't like other museums. It was a Venetian palace dropped into the middle of Boston. Isabella Stewart Gardner, a wealthy and eccentric art collector, had built it that way. She designed it herself. Every room, every painting, every piece of furniture was exactly where she wanted it. Her will was very clear. After she died, nothing could be moved or changed. The collection had to remain just as she left it. It was her personal masterpiece. 2 guards were on duty that night. Rick Abath was 23 years old. He was a musician in a rock band. So this was just a job. The other guard was Randy Stand, who was 25. It was supposed to be an easy shift. Abath was at the security desk. Stand was on patrol. Around 1:24 a.m., a fire alarm went off in another part of the museum. Abath saw it on the panel. He followed protocol, checked the area, and saw no fire. He turned the alarm off. It was a common occurrence. The system was old and finicky. He went back to the desk. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. A few minutes later, a buzzer rang at the side entrance. Abath looked at the security camera. 2 police officers stood outside. They were in full uniform. They had hats and coats. One had a thick, bushy mustache. It looked a little fake. They told Abath through the intercom that they were responding to a report of a disturbance. Abath was hesitant. It was against the rules to let anyone in after hours. But they were police officers. You don't tell the police to go away. He buzzed them in. This was the first mistake. And it was the biggest one. The museum security was based on one simple rule: keep the doors locked. Once that rule was broken, everything else fell apart. The 2 men walked into the security office. They told Abath he looked familiar. They said they had a warrant for his arrest. This was confusing. Abath had no idea what was happening. He was told to step away from the desk and face the wall. He complied. He was now away from the panic button, the only link to the outside world. He was handcuffed. He asked what was going on. One of the men said, "You're not being arrested. This is a robbery." They asked him to call the other guard down to the office. Abath, with his hands cuffed behind his back, called Stand on the walkie-talkie. He told him to come to the security desk. When Stand arrived, he was handcuffed too. The thieves were now in complete control. They had the only 2 people in the building tied up. They didn't seem nervous. They were calm, methodical. They wrapped duct tape around the guards' eyes and mouths. They took them down to the basement. They handcuffed one guard to a pipe and the other to a workbench. They were far apart. They couldn't help each other. The thieves told them they'd be fine if they just stayed quiet. They said, "You'll hear from us in about a year." The guards sat in the dark, cold basement. They could hear the thieves moving around upstairs. They heard footsteps. They heard frames being smashed. They heard glass breaking. For 81 minutes, they listened as their museum was torn apart. It must have felt like an eternity. The thieves knew exactly where they were going. They didn't wander around. They went straight to the Dutch room. This room was the heart of the collection. It held some of the most valuable paintings in the world. They ignored the most valuable painting in the museum, Titian's The Rape of Europa. Instead, they went for 2 specific Rembrandts and a Vermeer. They took Rembrandt's The Storm on the Sea of Galilee. It was his only seascape, a masterpiece of light and shadow, chaos and faith. It was huge. Too big to carry easily. They didn't bother to unscrew it from the wall. They just took a blade and sliced the canvas right out of its frame. The sound must have been awful. A clean, sharp tear. They did the same to A Lady and Gentleman in Black, another Rembrandt. Then they went for the Vermeer, the concert. Johannes Vermeer painted very few pictures in his short life. Only about 34 are known to exist today. This was one of them. It was small, quiet, and priceless. It depicted 2 women and a man playing music in a sunlit room. It was a perfect moment of peace and harmony. The thieves simply took it off the wall. They weren't gentle. They weren't art lovers. They were butchers. They left the empty frames on the floor. They smashed another frame to get a small Rembrandt self-portrait etching about the size of a postage stamp. Their choices were strange. They took a Goviert Flink painting, which for years had been mistaken for a Rembrandt. They clearly had a list that was slightly out of date. They went to another room, the Short Gallery. They took 5 drawings by the French artist Edgar Degas. They were small sketches of horses and jockeys. Yeah, they also tried to take a bronze eagle finial that sat atop a Napoleonic flag. The screws were too difficult to remove, so they gave up on the flag but took the eagle. Then they did something truly bizarre. They went to the Blue Room and took a painting by Edouard Manet Chez Tortoni. It was hanging on the other side of the room from more valuable works, and on their way out, they went to the Chinese room and stole an ancient Chinese bronze beaker, or gu. It wasn't particularly valuable compared to everything else, maybe a few $1,000s. Why take that? It made no sense. After gathering their loot, they made 2 trips to their car, a reddish-brown hatchback parked outside. They loaded up the art, they came back inside and checked on the guards one last time. They asked if they were comfortable. It was a strange moment of politeness in the middle of a brutal crime. Then they left. The time was 2:45 a.m. They had been inside for 81 minutes. They disappeared into the Boston night. They took with them 13 pieces of art. The value was estimated at $200 million back then. Today, it's well over $500 million. It remains the single largest property theft in history. The guards were not discovered until the morning shift arrived. At 8:15 a.m., the new guards found the museum locked and couldn't get a response. They called the police. When the police finally got inside, they found the security office in disarray. They followed the noise coming from the basement and found Ricka Bath and Randy Hestad still tied up, cold, and scared. When the museum director, Anne Hawley, arrived, she walked through the rooms. She saw the empty frames. She described them as looking like open wounds on the walls. The loss was immediate and devastating. The museum, which was supposed to be a permanent, unchanging monument, had been violated. The soul had been ripped out of it. The FBI was called in, and the investigation began immediately. But it was messy from the start. The crime scene was contaminated. In the initial chaos, museum staff and police had walked all over the place. Evidence was lost. The thieves had been smart in some ways. They took the security tapes from the night of the robbery. They also took the printouts from the motion detectors, so the FBI couldn't trace their exact movements through the museum. The first person of interest was the guard, Ricka Bath. He had broken protocol. He let the thieves in. He had also, it turned out, hosted a small party in the museum earlier that night. Reputation for being a bit of a slacker, a stoner. The FBI looked at him hard. Was he just a naive kid who made a terrible mistake? Or was he the inside man? Bath has always maintained his innocence. He said he was just a 23-year-old who didn't want to get shot. He made a split-second decision under pressure. He failed a lie detector test, but those are notoriously unreliable. For years, a cloud of suspicion hung over him. He moved away, tried to start a new life, but the heist followed him. The investigation quickly moved from the bumbling guard to a much darker world, the Boston mob. This wasn't the work of sophisticated international art thieves. The methods were too crude. Cutting paintings from frames is something a professional would never do. This felt local, and it felt like Boston. In the 1980s and 90s, the Boston underworld was a violent and tangled place. The FBI believed the art was stolen not to be sold, but to be used as a bargaining chip. It was a get-out-of-jail-free card. If a mob boss got into trouble, he could offer to trade the location of the art for a lighter sentence. The trail led to a small-time crew of criminals who operated out of an auto body shop in Dorchester called TRC Auto Repair. It was run by a mobster named Carmelo Merlino. The shop was a known hangout for local thieves and gangsters. The FBI began to hear whispers. Informants started talking. A picture began to form. One of the main suspects was a career criminal named Robert Bobby Donati. He was a fringe player in the local mob, always looking for a big score to impress the bosses. He had a connection. A close friend of his was a former museum security expert who had once consulted for the Gardner. This friend may have unknowingly given Donati information about the museum's security weaknesses, like the old alarm system and the 2-guard protocol. The theory is that Donati masterminded the heist. He planned it. He knew what to take. He got a crew together, but there was a problem. In September 1991, a little over a year after the heist, Bobby Donati was murdered. He was found in the trunk of his Cadillac, brutally beaten and stabbed. His death was unrelated to the art heist. It was part of a bloody mob power struggle. But if he was the mastermind, he likely took the secret of the art's location to his grave. The trail went cold. Years passed. The empty frames hung on the walls of the Gardner Museum, a constant reminder of the loss. The FBI chased down hundreds of leads. They went to Japan, to Ireland, chasing rumors about the IRA or the Yakuza. Nothing panned out. The case grew colder and colder. Then, in the late 1990s, the focus returned to Carmelo Merlino's crew. Merlino himself was arrested on unrelated charges. Facing a long prison sentence, he started to talk. He told the FBI he could help get the art back. He said he knew the people who had it. He offered to broker a deal. He wanted the $5 million reward and his freedom. The FBI was skeptical, but they listened. Merlino directed them to an old associate, a man named William Billy Youngworth. Youngworth claimed to know the location of the art. He even led an art recovery expert to a warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn. But It was a dead end. The warehouse was empty. It was all a scam. Merlino and his crew were just trying to play the FBI to get out of jail. It was another frustrating dead end. The case stalled again for another decade. The original investigators retired. New agents took over. It seemed like the mystery would never be solved. But in 2010, a new lead emerged. It pointed to an aging, low-level mobster living in Connecticut named Robert Gentile. He was in his 70s, with a bad back and a quiet life. But the FBI believed he was the last living person who knew where the art was. An informant, the widow of one of Gentile's associates, told the FBI that her late husband had been involved with the stolen art. She claimed she had once seen Gentile give her husband one of the stolen Degas paintings. The FBI put intense pressure on Gentile. They arrested him on unrelated gun and drug charges. They searched his house in Manchester, Connecticut. They dug up his backyard. In his basement, they found a handwritten list of the 13 stolen Gardner pieces, along with their estimated black market values. They also found a police hat and a copy of the Boston Herald from the day after the heist. It was circumstantial, but it was compelling. Gentile denied everything. He said he knew nothing about the art. He claimed he was just a small-time gambler, not a major player. The FBI didn't believe him. They leaned on him hard, threatening him with a long prison sentence in his old age. They offered him a deal: tell us where the art is, and you can walk. He refused. He even took a polygraph test. When asked if he knew where the paintings were, he said no. The test showed he was telling the truth. Was he a brilliant liar? Was he senile and had forgotten? Or was he really telling the truth? The FBI believed he was the key. They were convinced the art had been moved from Boston to Connecticut, and then possibly to Philadelphia through Gentile's criminal network. But Gentile never broke. He went to prison, was released, and then arrested again on other charges. The FBI hounded him until his death in 2021. He took whatever secrets he had to the grave. Finally, in 2013, on the 23rd anniversary of the heist, the FBI made a major announcement. For the first time, they officially identified the thieves. They said they were confident they knew who went into the museum that night. The men were David Turner and George Reisfelder. Both were associates of Carmelo Merlino. Both had connections to the TRC auto repair crew. Both were dead. Reisfelder died of a drug overdose in 1991. Turner died in 2017. The FBI's theory was now more complete. Donati was the planner. Turner and Reisfelder were the muscle, the two men who dressed as cops and went inside. After the heist, the art was held by the Merlino crew. It was likely offered for sale to various criminal figures, but it was too hot to handle. It was too famous. No one could display it. No one could sell it on the open market. Its only value was as leverage. The FBI believes that sometime after Donati's murder, the art was moved out of Boston. It may have been taken to Connecticut by Robert Gentile. From there, it could have been passed on to mob connections in Philadelphia. There were reports of a potential sighting of one of the Rembrandts in a Philly mobster's home. But like everything else in this case, the trail went cold. So where is the art now? That is the $500 million question. There are a few possibilities, none of them good. The best case scenario is that the art is still out there, hidden away in a climate-controlled storage unit or a private vault. Someone, somewhere, has it. Maybe it's the descendant of a gangster who has no idea what to do with it. Maybe it's being held as an investment, waiting for the heat to die down. The Gardner Museum still holds out hope for this scenario. The reward for information leading to the art's safe return is now $10 million. No questions asked. They just want the art back. A more likely and more tragic scenario is that the art has been damaged or destroyed. The thieves were not art historians. They cut the canvases from their frame. They likely rolled them up. This would have caused catastrophic damage to the centuries-old paint, causing it to crack and flake. If the art was stored improperly in a damp basement or hot attic world, it could be ruined beyond repair. It's also possible that as the people involved started dying or getting arrested, the art became a liability. The easiest way to get rid of a liability is to destroy it, burn it, dump it in a river. The thought is sickening to anyone who cares about art and history. The final possibility is that the art was broken up and sold off in pieces. A small Degas drawing might be easier to sell on the black market than a massive world-famous Rembrandt. Perhaps the collection no longer exists as a whole. It has been scattered to the winds. Today, if you visit the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, you can still see the crime scene. In the Dutch room, empty frames hang on the silk-covered walls. It is a haunting sight. It is a violation of Isabella Gardner's will, but the museum trustees decided to leave the frames as a statement. They are placeholders, waiting for the masterpieces to come home. They serve as a memorial to what was lost and a symbol of hope for what might one day be found. The story of the Gardner heist is so compelling because it's a perfect mystery. It has everything. A beautiful, strange setting, daring low-tech crime, a cast of colorful characters from the Boston underworld, and a trail of clues that leads everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It is also a story about profound loss. The world didn't just lose property worth $500 million, it lost 13 unique pieces of our shared cultural history. We lost Rembrandt's only seascape, a powerful depiction of humanity struggling against nature. We lost one of only a handful of Vermeer's quiet, perfect worlds. We lost the chance to stand in front of these works and feel what generations before us have felt. The thieves didn't just steal paintings, they stole a part of our collective memory. The investigation remains open. The FBI still gets tips, people still search for the lost art. These books are written about it. Documentaries are made. Every St. Patrick's Day, the story is retold. But with each passing year, the hope of finding the art dwindles. Most of the people involved are now dead. The memories have faded. The trail has gone ice cold. The heist was a collision of two worlds. The refined, beautiful world of Isabella Stewart Gardner and the brutal, pragmatic world of the Boston mob. For 81 minutes, those two worlds met. The result was the greatest art heist in history, and a mystery that, in all likelihood, will never be solved. The empty frames will continue to hang on the walls, asking a question that no one can answer.